Working the night shift at a cursed Missouri amusement park, 7 sinister rules revealed. Every whisper in Echo Ridge Amusement Park was a sinister reminder of the terror that thrived in its shadows. Grace knew she was stepping into a nightmare, but what choice did she have? Losing her job at the diner had left her with mounting bills and a desperate need to provide for Lily. The storm brewing in the distance seemed to echo her worries, rumbling ominously as she entered the twisted gates, the once bright entrance now a gateway to dread. The chill in the air was palpable, wrapping around her like a shroud. The silence was too loud, a haunting stillness interrupted only by the distant hum of decaying attractions. The Ferris wheel loomed above, its dull colors fading, a ghost from a time when laughter filled the air instead of fear. Grace's heart raced. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, flickering just out of reach. She shook her head, attributing them to her exhaustion. But the uneasiness tugged at her, growing more persistent as she wandered through the park's ruin. She glanced at her watch. The first hour felt mundane enough to trick her into a false sense of security. But then, from somewhere far off, a sound pierced the silence: distorted laughter. It sent chill bumps racing up her arms. "Just the wind," she muttered, forcing herself to breathe. She pushed on past the weathered rides, each step becoming a sorcerer's curse. Disconcerting graffiti adorned the walls, reminders of vanished families that haunted the park. "Trust no one, not even your supervisor, and never stay near the Ferris wheel at midnight." Goosebumps prickled her skin. Folklore she'd scoffed at in the light of day clanged heavy in her mind now that her resolve began to crumble. The unexpected storm broke overhead, rain pouring down like a curtain concealing horrors. The shadows flickered again. This time, they were closer. Panic twisted in her gut. The air turned electric, a toxic mix of fear and anticipation. The clock chimed 11 ominously, a countdown to potential doom. Grace's heart thudded loudly in her chest, the weight of eyes burning into her back. Every instinct screamed at her to run as the park manager appeared from the mist, a scruffy figure with a disarming grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Just doing my rounds, keeping the dream alive," he purred in a voice smothered with charm yet laced with something unsettling. "Hey," she stammered, steadying her breath despite the dread. "I was just, exploring." "Exploring, huh? Just remember the rules." His eyes glinted with a knowing that twisted her stomach. "Don't linger near the Ferris wheel after midnight. You wouldn't want to disturb the lost ones." Before she could digest his words, the laughter returned, not playful, but a raw, jagged sound that knotted her insides. It echoed all around, and as if summoned, an eerie sight unfolded before her. Shadowy figures twisted above the Ferris wheel, ensnared in an eternal dance of grief and despair. Every instinct urged her to flee, but her feet felt like lead. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The shadows thickened, crowding around as if the park were alive, conspiring against her. Each moment stretched with tension, uncertainty gnawed at her spirit. The clock neared midnight, and as Grace fought to comprehend her suffocating reality, the figures turned towards her, a cacophony of desperate souls crying out for release. Just outside her vision, darkness slithered in, waiting for her decision, to trust the man lurking in the shadows or succumb to the whispers of despair. A chilling figure moved closer, a sinister grin that promised unfathomable horrors, and all Grace could think was she already too late to escape? As dawn approached, she realized she stood at the brink of a decision that could seal her fate. Would they leave Echo Ridge, or would they become part of the tragic history consumed by the park? The chilling wind howled through the dilapidated remnants of Echo Ridge, swirling raindrops into a frenzy. The faces in the shadows shifted uneasily, their sorrowful eyes reflecting the midnights of long-forgotten lives. Grace's heart raced, a wild drum echoing in her ears, almost drowning out the distorted laughter that sent icy fingers creeping up her spine. Too terrified to move, she felt the park's malevolent grip tighten around her throat. Ghostly whispers filled the air, a murmur at the edge of understanding, entwining her in a spell of dread. Grace couldn't tell where the laughter ended and the cries for help began. She steeled herself, every muscle coiling tight as the clock struck midnight. The hour echoed like a death knell, a warning that whatever lurked in the shadows was now unleashed. "Run," a distant voice begged, a plea that wove through the liquid darkness. It felt so close, as if the shadows had taken shape, commanding her limbs into action. But fear paralyzed her. She could only watch as the figures above the Ferris wheel stretched toward her, their skeletal hands beckoning. From the corners of her vision, she noticed the park manager still lingering, a ghostly smile playing on his lips. He seemed to revel in the terror surrounding her. "They cannot leave," he hissed softly, and his words felt like venom, poisoning the air. It was clear he had known about the darkness. This was no simple amusement park, it was a repository for lost souls, trapped in a perpetual night. Grace's instincts finally surged, and she stumbled back, wanting desperately to tear herself from the hypnotic sway of those figures. The metallic clang of the Ferris wheel began a slow, agonizing rotation, as if awakening from a slumber, pushing forth echoes of laughter mingled with screams. She turned to run, but the path before her was engulfed in shadow, an impenetrable wall mocking her desperate escape. Just then, she caught sight of a single light source ahead. People, she thought with a flicker of hope, maybe they could help. Urged by instinct, she sprinted toward it. The shadows behind her howled angrily, chasing her with swiftness that made her breath catch. The darkness clawed at her back, like nails wrought from despair, eager to reclaim what it had lost. "Help! Someone, please!" Grace screamed, but the laughter only intensified, echoing off the crumbling walls, feeding on her fear. She lunged toward the light, discovering it was a fading neon sign above a decrepit snack stand. It flickered, buzzing and sparking with intensity. Suddenly, the laughter faded to chilling silence, and in that silence, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a child no older than Lily. His eyes, wide with terror, glistened like marbles in the neon glow. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, voice trembling as he whispered something just beneath his breath. "What? What are you talking about?" Grace demanded, looking over her shoulder. The shadows lunged again, and though she tried to turn away, something held her fast. The child took a step closer to her, his frail body seeming to pulse with urgency, as if her fate depended on his next words. "You must know the truth before it's too late," he said, and as if summoned, the wind howled louder, and the oppressive darkness rolled closer. What truth? Grace felt as if the walls were closing in, dread clawing at her. Before she could grasp the urgency, the clock tolled once more, reverberating through the park, and the shadows pressed closer, threatening to engulf all light. "Trust no one." The child's voice rang out as the shadows lunged forward, the laughter swelling immensely. Grace felt herself drawn back into the swirling darkness. Was it truly too late? In the eye of chaos, she stood on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything or seal her fate forever. As the shadows took shape around her, she realized a decision weighed heavy in the air. Would she embrace the darkness or fight for the flicker of truth before it snuffed out entirely? Grace's world spun in chaos as the shadows surged like a dark tide, expanding, twisting, and contorting into grotesque forms. Panic gripped her throat, but she couldn't let despair cloud her mind. Lurching away from the child, she felt the cold breath of the shadows tickling her skin. Trust no one, echoed in her mind, but who could she trust in this hellish sight? The neon sign flickered sporadically, casting sharp shadows that danced mockingly around her. The child's wide eyes haunted her as she stumbled back, grappling with the reality of the park. With every frantic breath, the air thickened, nearly suffocating her. She darted for the nearest booth, its wooden frame warped and splintering. The laughter had returned, a cacophony of manic terror, mixing with the faint cries of those lost in the dark. Who were they? What happened to them? Grabbing a rusted metal object from the ground, she clutched it like a talisman. It wasn't much, but it was anything to fend off the swirling forces at her back. The child stood still, mouth moving silently, fingers pointing to the Ferris wheel, its monstrous silhouette looming against the black sky. "Get away from there!" she screamed, feeling more helpless as the shadows thickened, merging back into the twisted ride. But somehow, she needed to reach that child. Something crucial lay in the secrets hidden in his gaze. "Stay back!" she shouted, escaping into the path winding toward the wheel. Each step felt cursed, like each pebble was a lost soul guiding her deeper into despair. The ground began shifting underfoot, and her heart thundered in sync with the low growling laughter that grew louder with every passing second. Suddenly, she felt a tug, something invisible but powerful. It pulled her, dislodging her sanity for a split second. The fleeting thought popped up, maybe I should just give in. But the child's voice slashed through her doubt. "The truth!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "Find the truth!" Desperation surged again. She couldn't ignore it. Grabbing the booth's edge, she leaned over to catch her breath and focus. She scanned the surroundings, trying to orient herself. Then her gaze landed on a figure in the distance, a woman standing by the shadows of the old carousel, staring back, shrouded in darkness but with an unmistakable calmness. "Help!" Grace shouted, hoping desperately. But the woman raised a finger to her lips, silencing her. Something about the gesture sent dread coursing through Grace. This wasn't a savior, it smelled more like a phantom who'd given in long ago. The air crackled. The shadows quivered, coiling tighter around Grace's limbs, drawing her toward the carousel. As she wrestled against them, the wooden horses twisting in unnatural glee, she felt something pulling at her heart, a promise of freedom or death. "Embrace it!" the child shouted from behind. "Before it embraces you." The world spun, the music of the carousel rising, overlapping with the shadows' howls. Grace felt madness creeping in, she struggled, and then the wave intensified, knocking her off balance. She staggered forward, forcing her feet to move against her will toward that entrancing light that flickered off the carousel's rough edges. Suddenly, from the edge of her vision, a flickering began anew, a cascade of images, flashbacks of laughter, echoes of love, betrayal, and a single devastating truth. What was the truth? Why were they all trapped here? With a surge of adrenaline, she crossed the threshold. A bright light burst from the center of the carousel, illuminating the figures, revealing faces she painfully recognized. "Lily!" Grace breathed, her voice breaking through the tumult. But the moment was eclipsed as the shadows converged with ferocity. "Trust no one." The children's laughter blended with the shadows' screams, merging until there was only a deafening roar. And at the center of it all, would she find her sister, or was the truth something much darker lurking beneath? The ground shook as the laughter crescendoed, and Grace felt her stomach drop. The carousel turned faster, dragging her into its whirlpool as she grasped desperately for the flickering light, for Lily, for sanity. Could she face whatever lay at the end of this nightmare? Was the truth worth finding, or was it a deeper descent into despair? The darkness closed in, and she was left teetering on the knife edge of a decision. The world dissolved into flickering chaos. Grace's heart raced as the carousel spiraled wildly, shadows intertwining with the faces of the lost. "Lily!" she screamed again, but the name was swallowed by the darkness. The laughter echoed even louder now, a twisted symphony that reverberated through her bones. She was so close, yet light seemed to pull away like a mirage. With each turn, the images of her sister morphed into distant whispers, blending with distorted faces that loomed and hissed. Were they pleading for help or mocking her fear? Clenching the rusted metal object tighter, Grace fought against the shadows creeping up her legs, swallowing her into their abyss. Panic bubbled in her throat. She wouldn't give in. "Find the truth!" echoed in her mind, the child's voice cutting like glass through the haze. What truth? Was it worth the risk of stepping deeper into this nightmare? Sweat trickled down her back, but it ignited something fierce within her. The carousel spun faster. The music warped, blending with anguished screams. Grace pushed through, straining against the thrumming darkness. With a low growl behind her, she could almost sense the shadow's hunger, urging her to relent. What if Lily was lost forever? What if embracing the truth meant losing everything else? Desperation clawed at her thoughts. You have to try, Grace, she whispered to herself, stepping forward despite the chaos, and then, just like that, she was there. The light from the carousel flickered brilliantly as she approached its heart. Inside, spectral figures of children danced, their eyes void, yet their mouths formed silent screams. They beckoned her closer, closer still until she nearly collided with the edge of madness. Lily! Grace shouted again, her voice raw. The presence of her sister's spirit glimmered through the mist. She could feel it. There was something so desperately familiar, so achingly beautiful within that glow. But behind her came a howling sound, sharp and piercing. The shadows writhed and hissed in fury, clawing at her as if they wanted to snatch away whatever shred of hope she clung to. Fingers brushed against her back, cold and lingering. Grace spun around, summoned by the spirit's warmth. The woman from before stood there, closer now, her face barely visible, but the understanding there was unmistakable. It wasn't serenity, it held the weight of profound loss. Let go, it's too late, the woman breathed, her voice weaving with the cacophony around them. You're meant to be a part of this. No. Grace shouted, defiance igniting her pulse. I'm not like you. In that moment, the carousel halted. The eerie music settled into silence. The figures paused, staring at Grace with hollow eyes, waiting for her response, waiting for her acceptance or denial of the curse that bound them all. A choice loomed, and as it did, the light surrounding the carousel began to extinguish, leaving only darkness. Shadows pulsed, surging in waves like hunger, ready to claim. Embrace it, Grace. The child yelled from beyond. You can't escape. What sort of truth was this? Was there a way out, or was this the end of her fight? Grace felt the ground tremble beneath her, shadows sharpening, preparing to strike. Lily, she breathed again, turning to the light that flickered above. Time stretched, holding its breath, condensing the weight of everything she feared. Suddenly, something shifted among the figures, the glimpse of a familiar smile. If she could get to her, if she could just touch that flickering light, she took a step forward, and another, retreating from the woman's smoky grasp, sensing that the final choice was unfurling before her. Yet, was moving toward the light a chance at salvation or a step towards oblivion? As she lunged for the brightness, the carousel erupted back to life, and an unseen force slammed against her, dragging her into the shadows once again, laughter erupting in terrifying harmony. Trust no one, echoed viciously in her mind, just as her world spun into darkness once more. And where was the end of this twisting? Madness? Grace clenched her fists, prepared to resist the insanity, but as she dodged the grasp of the looming shadows, one thought pounded in her head: had she done enough to save Lily, or would she forever be lost, too? The shadows surged around Grace, a suffocating wave of despair that twisted and tightened like a noose. The laughter, a cruel symphony, whipped through the darkness, mocking her cries. She stumbled, barely keeping her footing as the carousel twisted back into motion. The vague outline of Lily's glow flickered, growing dimmer with each passing moment. No! Grace screamed, her voice barely surfacing above the cacophony. I'm not letting you take her. In a surge of adrenaline, she charged forward, determination clawing at her insides. The carousel's music echoed, a maddening discord that pierced through her thoughts like nails on a chalkboard. There had to be a way to reach Lily, to free her, and perhaps even save herself from this never-ending nightmare. The moment she passed the spectral figures, they began to shimmer and warp. Their hollow eyes bore into her, tears of darkness spilling from their sockets. Grace felt the chill of their despair wash over her. Each tear they shed echoed in her own heart. Help us, one whispered, voice a breath of wind, chilling her spine. She stumbled, her heart pounding even harder than before. I can't save you. I have to save my sister. But those words only stirred the shadows further. They hissed and crawled towards her, a torrent of writhing despair, attempting to drag her into their depths. Grace fought back, summoning all her will. She struck out with the rusted metal object, the only thing she clung to in this madness, and it glowed faintly, perhaps a reminder of strength she hadn't realized she possessed. The laughter still rang, encircling her like a predator's snarl. Join us. It hissed. She stood firm, recalling the warmth of Lily's spirit, the soft crinkle of her smile. Was it selfish to want to escape alone? No. Her sister needed her. That was enough. With a breath, Grace pushed forward again, the spinning carousel a blur around her. Shadows clawed at her ankles, twisting and biting like vicious creatures. But she wouldn't stop. Not now. Not when Lily's south light flickered so close. Then, a horrifying thought struck her. Was Lily a captive or a willing participant in this twisted game? Would she welcome the darkness if it meant safety? Panic spread like ice. Lily. Don't let them take you. She wailed, desperation cutting through her. The figures turned their eyes toward her, almost as if weighing her plea. But their mouths remained mute, and the hollow dread climbed higher. Suddenly, the carousel slowed, its music fading to a low whimper before dying completely. Grace's heart dropped. The atmosphere shifted, hanging heavy in the air. Silence wrapped around her in a shroud, and for a moment, it felt almost peaceful. Then she heard it, a whisper beneath the quiet, soft yet sinister. You're too late, little girl. It came from behind, and she whipped around, facing the woman again, the one who had tried to dissuade her. You'll join us soon enough. The truth waits. Curls of dark smoke curled around the woman, and Grace felt herself backpedal instinctively, confusion flooding her thoughts. What did she mean? What truth? A rumble echoed through the ground, shaking her to her core. The carousel began to spin again, faster than before, shadows whirling like a storm. Grace had only moments left. She had to make a choice before the darkness consumed everything, but just ahead in the midst of swirling chaos there was a flicker. A radiant light beckoned from Lily's presence, more vibrant now. Grace! Came her sister's voice, clearer than before. Did she dare step into the light, knowing it might be a trick? Would moving toward it bring Lily to safety or seal their fates together in the dark forever? In that instant, time seemed to fracture, the edges of clarity melting away. Grace could feel the pull of both the shadows and the light, a duality battling within her soul. Just as she made her choice, a deafening clap echoed in the air. A certainty crashed in her bones. Was it salvation or damnation waiting on the other side? Choose, Grace. Echoed the phantasmal chorus. And then, the darkness surged forward, claws extended. The question hung heavily over her: would she step into that glow or allow the suffocating shadows to claim her? Time stood still, twisting with anticipation for her choice. The moment stretched endlessly as Grace stood on the precipice of her decision. The shadows writhed menacingly, their whispers growing louder, drowning out her thoughts. Join us. Join us. It was an overwhelming chorus, pulling her deeper into despair, but the light Lily's voice sang through the chaos, pulling her like a tether. With a gasp, Grace lunged toward it. She felt cold fingers clutch at her wrists, scrabbling to pull her back. The world around her spiraled as she surged forward, desperate and determined. As she burst into the light, it enveloped her, and for a brief moment, she felt warmth seep into her bones. Grace! Lily's face was radiant, eyes filled with a mixture of joy and terror. But the glow was deceptive, it flickered like a dying flame. The shadows loomed at the edges, creeping closer. Lily! Grace reached out, but a shadowy tendril lashed out, wrapping around her ankle. It was icy and heavy, dragging her down into the void. Panic surged anew. No! I want to let you take her. In a dizzying whirl, the light clashed with the darkness. A raw energy pulsed in the air, and then everything stopped. The carousel froze, the shadows retreating momentarily, as if holding their breath. The eerie quiet was haunting, yet it crackled with unresolved tension. What is happening? Grace's voice trembled as she tried to shake free from the shadow's grip. Listen. Lily urged, her expression growing serious. You have to understand. It's all a game, the shadows, the laughter. They feed off fear, and they want you to despair. They want you to doubt. The tendril tightened its grip, chilling Grace to her core. But beneath the icy fear, a flicker of courage ignited. You're right. I want to give in. I want to let them win. With a roar, Grace yanked her foot free, feeling the force of her will crackling through her body. It felt as if a dam had burst inside her. She had to fight. In one motion, she spun around and raised the metal object she had clung to. It glowed with a fierce light, casting the darkness away. I choose you, Lily. I choose us. She shouted. The symbols inscribed on the object started to pulse, vibrant rays shot out, illuminating the carousel and dispelling the shadows that closed in. The laughter turned to screams of horror, shrill and high-pitched, as if the darkness itself was in pain. Together. Lily shouted, her voice merging with Grace's as they stood side by side, defiance burning brightly in their eyes. In that moment, a horrifying truth unfolded before them. The shadows began to unravel, not just from their grip, but from the carousel itself, revealing twisted faces of the lost souls, captives who had succumbed to despair. Their hollow eyes met Grace's, and they seemed to plead. What is this? Grace gasped, feeling tears prick at her eyes. Were they all trying to save someone too? Yes. Lily's voice was urgent. Fear is infectious here, and it holds them. We have to break the cycle. The shadows lunged at them again, furious at the light emerging from their bodies. With a fierce determination, Grace and Lily swung the glowing object wide, scattering the darkness like ash. But darkness had its own cunning. As they expelled shadows, a new figure emerged from the chaos, the woman who had warned Grace before. She looked more monstrous than ever, her features distorted, eyes glowing with malicious glee. You think you can escape? You think this will save you? As she laughed, Grace felt that familiar crushing dread return. The light flickered and dimmed, a cruel reminder that they were far from safe. Stay strong. Lily cried, even as the laughter bore down on them. But the darkness wasn't done. Whispers surged around them, echoing with sinister clarity. The choice can always be made again, little girl. This is only the beginning. Just then, everything shattered, the carousel spinning violently as it threatened to pull them both into the void once again. Grace's heart raced, realization dawning. Was this battle even close to over? With shadows closing in once more, Grace faced the woman, eyes blazing with fierce resolution. What do you want from us? Her voice held a tremor but was tightly wrapped in defiance. Oh, darling, the woman hissed, the laughter of the shadows filling the air like a cacophony of broken dreams. This place will always be your home, whether you accept it or not. As reality warped around them, Grace's last thought was of survival. She clutched tight to her sister's hand, resolute. What awaited them beyond this looming dread? What truth lay hidden beneath the surface of despair? Just hold on. Grace choked out as she felt the darkness start to fold in again. The world around them dissolved into a cyclone of color and sound, a dizzying blur of light and shadow that twisted their senses. Grace felt the ground beneath her teeter, and the carousel seemed to scream, its painted horses contorting in agony as the shadows tightened their grip. Lily. We have to move. Grace shouted, her heart pounding violently against her ribcage. The metal object flickered, struggling to maintain its power. With a desperate yank, Grace pulled Lily away from the monstrous woman's reach. They stumbled backward as shadows lashed at them, grasping, clawing, trying to pull them into the abyss, but Lily was too focused to panic. We can't let fear take control. We use the light. She insisted, her voice cutting through the chaos. As if on cue, the darkness swirled in response, bringing with it an overwhelming stench of decay and despair. Grace's stomach churned at the acrid smell, but she kept her grip on Lily, anchoring her in the midst of the storm. "Just focus," Grace cried as she raised the object again. It pulsed with a faint glow, almost imperceptible against the suffocating blackness. "Let us push together. We're stronger when we're united." The shadows hissed with indignation, the laughter morphing into anguished wails. Yet, their resolve grew stronger. Side by side, they lifted the glowing metal, channeling their combined energy into it. The light intensified, a beacon against the encroaching dread. "Now, Grace!" Lily urged as shadows surged forward like a dark wave. With a primal scream, Grace slammed the object into the swirling dark mass. An explosion of blinding light erupted, and for a moment, it felt as though they were standing atop a mountain, the world beneath their feet fading away, but just as quickly, the shadows coiled back, rushing at them with renewed fury. The laughter twisted into a chilling cacophony, echoing in their ears. "Fools! You think you can play with the darkness? You are only prolonging the inevitable." The woman's voice sliced through the chaos, dripping with malice. As the shadows converged again, Grace sensed a pulse and energy emanating from the very ground of the carousel. There was something deeper, ancient, almost alluring lurking beneath the surface. "What is this place?" she thought, a gnawing dread creeping up her spine. Just then, the carousel ground to a sudden halt. Silence blanketed the chaos, followed by the soft, disconcerting sound of faint whispers. "Grace, listen." Lily's eyes widened in alarm. "They're trying to communicate." In the eerie quiet, the shadows softened, revealing faint images frozen in time. Twisted faces of other lost souls, eyes wide in horror, clutching at their own throats, mouths open in silent screams. It was a horrifying showcase of despair. Grace felt bile rise as she briefly glanced at them. "We're not like them. We can break free." Her determination surged again, but shadows slithered around them like serpents, and one wrapped cruelly around Grace's wrist. Cold seeped into her bones again, and in that moment, despair flickered at the edges of her mind. What if they couldn't escape? What if this was all some twisted trap? "Don't you dare give in. We can't lose each other." Lily's fierce voice snapped her back. Without waiting, Grace charged forward, pulling Lily with her into the thrumming heart of the carousel. "Together, Lily. We can shatter this illusion." A roaring energy surged within as they ran into the pulsating shadows, the glow beneath their feet answering them in kind. "We choose hope." Grace screamed, her voice rising above the din. The shadows shrieked, a terrifying sound that echoed off the carousel, but a light grew, casting brilliant colors in every direction. Yet still, the darkness lingered, swirling and whispering around them. "You haven't seen the truth yet. You think this is all of it." As the lights flickered, Grace felt the ground tremble beneath them. Was this the end or just a new beginning? Shadows writhed, ominous whispers promised new horrors, and the truth tantalized them from within the depths of the carousel. "Brace yourself." Grace shouted, as the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing darkness deeper than all they had faced. What lay hidden below? What new horrors awaited them there? The chasm widened, breath snatched from Grace's lungs as darkness began to pour from the new abyss like thick, viscous sludge. A tugging sensation pulled at her core, as if the very essence of the carousel was trying to draw her in. She glanced at Lily, fear etched in her eyes, matching the frantic beating of Grace's heart. "Hold on to me," Grace shouted, grasping Lily's hand tighter. "We can't let it take us." The shadows howled, rushing at them like wolves, hungry and relentless. They clawed at the edges of the chasm, their whispers rising into a banshee cry. Each second felt like a lifetime as Grace fought the urge to flee, knowing that running would only lead them deeper into unknown terror. "Focus!" Lily screamed, her voice a lifeline in the growing chaos. "Use the light." With shaky hands, Grace raised the metal object again, its glow a flickering reminder that hope still existed. Pooling every ounce of courage she had, Grace tapped into that light. Together, she yelled, summoning everything she possessed. They concentrated, pouring their fear into the metal, desperate to transform it into a weapon against the darkness. A surge of energy shot through Grace, igniting vivid flashes of memories: laughter at the park, a warm summer day, the ordinary life they had almost forgotten. The shadows recoiled, swirling uncertainly. "Keep going," Lily urged, her grip unwavering. Just as the light surged forward, luminous rays piercing the oppressive darkness, the woman emerged from the shadows, face twisted in malicious delight. "You think brightness can drive me away?" she taunted, her voice dripping venom. Grace felt a shiver race down her spine as she caught glimpse of the darkness within the woman, a swirling void that spoke of the fears and nightmares she had absorbed from countless souls. The realization struck her: this creature was the quintessence of despair, feasting on the vulnerability of others. "Defy her. She can't wield our fears," Lily shouted. With renewed resolve, Grace hurled the glowing object at the woman. It flew in a perfect arc, bursting upon impact with an explosion of dazzling light. Grace squeezed her eyes shut, fearing what would come next. When she dared to peek, the woman reeled back. The shadows thrashed against the blinding light, snarling as if their very foundation crumbled beneath them, but then, an unsettling calm swept over the scene. The cacophony faded, and the darkness settled like a thick fog, suffocating. "What is happening?" Grace trembled, peering into the shadowy haze. "No!" the woman screeched, her anger bubbling like molten lava. "You don't understand. You're trapped forever. This light is only a flicker in an ever-consuming night." A sense of dread slithered back into Grace's heart. She had assumed light was the answer, but what if it was just a fleeting illusion? Before she could voice her thoughts, the ground shook violently beneath them, and the carousel began to vibrate, a low hum rising like a heartbeat. "Grace! We need to go deeper," Lily cried. "We can't hesitate now." Compelled by an urgency more profound than fear, Grace nodded. They pushed forward into the venting shadows, each step heavy with hesitation but buoyed by the light they produced. Yet, as they delved deeper, the carousel's sinister secrets entangled around them again, whispering promises of escape mingled with confusion. Faces flickered in the shadows, not just those of lost souls but of people they knew, friends and family. "Break the illusion," Grace shouted, pushing forward when suddenly, a horrifying realization struck her. What if they're all here because of us? The shadows recoiled, twisting into grotesque shapes as the whispers grew more frantic, a crescendo of chaos swallowing them whole. What did we unleash? Grace breathed, panic seizing her throat, and then, the darkness split, exposing the bleak truth of what lay beneath the thoughts, fears, and terrors that had been buried alive. "Together, Lily," Grace urged, heart pounding. "We have to face this." But as they prepared to confront the shadowy truth of the carousel, a new voice rose. Above the din, chillingly familiar yet hauntingly distant. "Why did you come back? You thought you could leave me behind." Glimpses of icy memories seared through Grace's mind, a shadow long thought buried. Could they escape, or had they opened a door to a terror far worse than they ever imagined? With that unsettling question lingering in the air, the darkness pulsed eagerly around them. What awaited them in the blackened depths? The shadows writhed, alive with dark intent as an unseen force pressed against Grace and Lily. The voice echoed, dripping with an eerie familiarity. It was as if tendrils of memory coiled around their throats, suffocating them with every syllable. Grace felt bile rise in her throat. Who had they forgotten? "Don't listen," Lily cried out, her voice breaking through the chaos. "It's a trick." But the sinister presence only thickened, swirling with memories they hadn't acknowledged. With every blink, Grace saw faces reappear in the darkness, hints of childhood laughter, echoes from family gatherings, even fleeting moments of joy from years past. They twisted into horrifying visages, taunting her with memories she desperately wished to escape. "Lily, we need to keep moving." Grace shouted, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The light they consistently generated flickered, and for a moment, doubt crept in. Was this all a cruel game, a buffet where fear was the main course? No. Lily's grip tightened, her resolve unwavering. Remember why we're here. We came for each other. To save everyone. Lily's confidence sparked a flicker of hope. They pushed forward, forcing their way through the oppressive mass of shadows. Grace felt the weight of their mission tighten around her chest, a reminder that escape was not just for them, it was for all those trapped within the carousel's nightmarish grip. As they moved deeper, whispers curled around them, dark and seductive. Grace could almost make out the words, an ethereal chant that tugged at her consciousness. Join us, the voices beckoned, seductive like a siren's song, magnifying their insecurities and doubts. Grace! Lily yelled, snapping her back to the present. Focus! With burning intensity, Grace clung to her friend's resolve as they struggled against the encroaching shadows. The light pulsed stronger, illuminating a path forward through the haze, but with each step, it grew fainter, as though the shadows were siphoning their hope. I can't let them win. Grace shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline blaze through her. We are not your prey. The darkness recoiled, howling in response. It was as if their defiance kindled the fear and despair sheltering within its depths. The momentary retreat gave them both pause. Ahead, the carousel loomed, twisted and warped by malevolent energy, its colors fading to a sickly hue. The haunted music that had once brought joy now played discordantly, each note drenched in anguish. Grace recognized the grim symbolism. It was not a fun ride, but a trap, the very heart of suffering that consumed the lost souls. Look! Lily shouted, pointing. In the midst of the shadows, a figure began to emerge. It was a child, with hollow eyes and a shabby clown costume that was once a bright, happy red. Instead, it was now marred with stains that looked like dried blood. Help us! It whimpered, reaching out with bony fingers. No! We can't trust it! Grace shouted, remembering the woman from before and the despair she wielded. It's a trap. Yet the child persisted, its voice a soft whimper that twisted through the dark. You're not alone. We can break free together. Cold dread washed over Grace. Who was this child? They had to push forward, but something deep within compelled her to look again. The darkness seemed to pulse around the child, alive with sinister energy, promising release, a promise that tasted like broken dreams. Grace! Lily's urgent cry pierced her hazy thoughts. Whatever you do, don't give in. Suddenly, the shadows surged, threatening to consume them, drawn to the flicker of their light, hungry for despair. Grace steeled herself, heart pounding in her ears, fighting a battle not just for survival, but for the very souls tormented by emptiness. Together. We're stronger than they are. Grace shouted, their dread colliding with renewed pursuit as the shadows twisted around, yearning to drag them toward hopelessness. But just as they prepared to confront the nightmarish truth that awaited, the carousel began to spin violently, summoning memories from the depths. The haunting laughter of the damned echoed, drowning out everything else, a chorus of despair. What new horror would they unearth amidst the spinning shadows? Would they stand strong against the tide of darkness, or would it claim them as its next victims in this waking nightmare? The carousel began to groan, the creaking metal an unsettling harbinger of chaos as they braced for impact. With terror clawing at their throats, they waited for whatever awaited them next in this wicked carnival of fears. The dark carnival of Echo Ridge thrashed around Grace and Lily, shadows tightening their grip, a final push against the unyielding light that pulsed between them. The carousel spun maniacally, each painted horse and faded smile growing ever more grotesque, blurring the line between memory and nightmare. Keep running! Lily shouted, her voice vibrant against the clamor, a beacon amidst the chaos. We can't let it swallow us whole. Grace clenched her fists around the glowing metal object, feeling its warmth surge with renewed vitality. Together! She yelled, and without hesitation, they plunged into the swirling vortex of darkness, hearts racing in tandem. The shadows howled like feral beasts, clamoring for despair, coaxing them into the sickening embrace of hopelessness. But they were stronger than fear, they had each other. With every step, Grace and Lily channeled their memories of laughter, love, and a bond that nothing could sever. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble violently. The carousel creaked, wooden steeds twisting as if coming alive, their painted eyes glaring with silent screams. A series of soul-chilling wails erupted, climbing in pitch until they seemed to claw at Grace's very essence. "Brace yourself!" Grace shouted, as vines of darkness tried to coil around their ankles, dragging them backward. With every ounce of strength, they fought against the tides of despair inching toward them. "We won't be your victims." With a fierce shout, Grace swung the metal object at the shadows. A burst of illumination exploded like fireworks, shattering the foreboding grip. The shadows shrieked, retreating momentarily, furiously rippling like water disturbed by a stone. "Lily!" Grace called, scanning the chaos for the faint glow of her sister, "We need to break this cycle. Focus on the light." Lily urged, determination blazing in her eyes. They stood firm together, both pushing all their will into the metal, chanting the promise of liberation: "Fear will not consume us." With a roar, a torrent of light surged forth, colliding with the advancing shadows. The air shook, the laughter crescendoing into the screams of the long-lost souls. Images flashed by, faces twisted with anguish, pleading through the shrouded fog. But now, joined in a bond of defiance, those voices sparked a powerful recognition. "We remember you." Grace cried into the swirling chaos, her voice cutting through the darkness. "You are not forgotten. We're fighting for you." The shadows, confused by their unity, faltered, and a fissure appeared among them, the path to freedom. The twisted woman emerged again, this time her glee replaced with rage and fear. "You think you can take back what belongs to me?" she bellowed, her voice twisting through the gloom. "You can have the darkness. But we choose the light." Grace shouted, holding fast to Lily and charging forward, fierce and unrelenting. They sprinted toward the cracking gap, the light beckoning them like a lighthouse on a stormy night, and the shadows shrieked, writhing in desperation. "Don't give up!" Lily cried, her voice unwavering, seamlessly entwined with Grace's as they forced their way through. With one last combined thrust, they crashed into the radiant expanse. The light engulfed them, exploding into a dazzling spectrum that consumed the shadows. For a heartbeat, everything grew silent, the eerie laughter faded, every shrouded figure lightened, softened, and then, much to their astonishment, dissolved into shimmering pixie dust dispersing into the air. The carousel crumbled, wooden horses breaking apart in a whispered sigh, leaving only sweet memories of joy in their wake. An infinite warmth enveloped Grace and Lily, the feeling electric, anchoring them to a sense of hope radiating from the expansive dawn that now spread across the horizon. "Did we do it?" Grace rasped, breathless and filled with awe. "I think so," Lily whispered, glancing around, eyes shining, tears mingling with the brilliant light. But then a hum resonated, gentle yet persistent, like a heartbeat. Shadows whispered of another dark chapter yet unwritten. The truth wants to be told. A voice from the fading chaos ebbed, filling the space around them with cautious hope mixed with foreboding. "I'll never leave you again," Grace promised, gripping Lily tighter. Together, they stepped forward, knowing each challenge conquered only forged their bond stronger. In the light of a new day, under the unbroken sky, they found not just freedom, but the strength of togetherness, a truth shrouded in the darkness of Echo Ridge Amusement Park. No longer wary of the shadows behind or the challenges ahead, Grace and Lily embraced the world anew, a beacon of love and light through all darkness yet to come. And just like that, they turned away from the past and took their first steps into a future wrapped in promise, the air thick with the sweet scent of hope. Now it's time for you to join the light. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on our next exclusive stories that dive deep into mysteries waiting to unravel. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep us alive and thriving. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your voice matters and we want to know. and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this incredible conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, so let us shine together.